Well, the thing about this video is that I tried to balance out the pros and the cons because I don't want to just do a negative hit piece. But honestly, I couldn't think. I even asked other people, and a lot of people. I even tried asking the naive fanboys, and their stuff didn't really seem like a positive. This seemed like a negative to me. So honestly, this whole video it's not meant to hate on the game. These are literally just my opinions on the game. Like all the review. Yeah, that's all a review is just someone's opinion. Now I went 40 something plus hours into the game, pushed myself to finish it, or to try and finish it, but the game really was just overall it feels like it has no soul, and it doesn't have it's just very boring and underwhelming. But we'll get into that once we start this video. All right, let's go. All right, now let's start with the cons. This is a big ass list. Maybe it'd be faster if we start with the pros since that's a shorter list. So let's start with the pros instead. Now, the pro is the housing system is pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie, having a small fort-like house that you can acquire things for as you venture through the game was a nice touch, and often the objects were more interesting and cooler than the actual gear that I got to equip. So that's kind of shitty, but it was still an interesting process. Like it killed a few. You literally could spend like hours doing it. I literally found myself on the stream spending like an hour or so messing with my fort once. I was like, okay, let me get to the actual game because it does require money, and I eventually did run out of money, and it requires building blocks. So you'll get those. You'll learn more about the housing system as you go through the game. Basically, you unlock more items through it. You unlock random decorations and stuff from it, from the battle pass most likely, which is the contracts. Contracts are pretty cool. It's literally, unfortunately, it seems like it's the only way to respect your skills, which is something we'll get into in a little bit. So overall, it's a pretty good system. Probably the best system in the whole game, honestly, to be honest with you. And I'm not much for housing either. Player housing, I've never really been that person, but it was really enjoyable for me personally. So that was one of them. And they give you with this. What's a cool little feature was that they give you going back to the housing. They give you a little feature or a decoration that you feed random shit to. Well, not random shit to, specific materials to. It's kind of like a sacrificing altar. The more you feed to it, the more reward you get. Unfortunately, the reward isn't really worth much, but it's still the thought that counts. Some of them give you like luck percentages, which helps with like gear drops. There's one that gives fire defense, which is pretty cool, and I don't remember what the other ones are. So I've only got like two of them, but unfortunately that's all I could think of for positives. Other than like I'm gonna try and stretch my mind real quick.
2 hours later.
They tried to institute a lot of things in the game, like I don't know, feature wise, like there's like little hidden dungeons and stuff, which is pretty cool. Then they have like these what I call cow levels. Those are pretty cool. Yeah. Okay, I tried. Now moving on to the cons list. All right. Now, this con list is not going to be a bug list. This is a mechanic feature list because bugs eventually get fixed. Features eventually get changed and everything, but bugs are more likely to get fixed than mechanics fixed. And plus, if I railed off every bug that was in the game, then I don't feel like making a 2-hour video. So, the first one was that this was a massive issue for every class that I played. Initially, I thought it was just server-wide, but as I kept playing, I found out that it was on multiple characters at different times in the day. There's a massive server lag issue. So there was a point where every time I would do something, the these skills would sometimes not always react. It would, not when I wanted them to. So there was an absolute definite server delay, not server delay, skill delay that I felt all the time. Like, it was pretty random too, and it was real annoying. So it was like playing a character in an ARPG. The last thing you want is a freaking delay, because that delay could be the difference between death and not, especially if you're playing hardcore mode, which is really where delay cannot happen at all. Because if you play hardcore mode, that's permadeath. So yeah. Another one was, this is something I hate in every game. Now, I'm not a developer. No, I don't know the actual reason behind this, so I'm just gonna play armchair developer for a second. I'm sorry if anybody hates that. It's just the only way I can explain it. And this is just how a consumer looks at it. I hate master volume. I think it's incredibly lazy, and it creates a bunch of problems. Especially when, like, for instance, back in APB, All Points Bulletin, it has master volume, or it did when I was playing it. And the cars would be so goddamn loud, you couldn't hear anything else. You couldn't hear your friends talking on Discord or anything. It was ridiculous. And there was no way to turn it down because you have to have your audio on APB, as it's like a shooter. So you need to hear footsteps, etc., and you couldn't. So that's an issue with this. My issue was that I had everything maxed, but the problem is being a streamer. I could get the volume up to a point where I wanted it, but it would drown me out on the stream, and my mic would already be maxed. So that's an issue. And when I kept it down at an understandable volume, I couldn't hear anything that was going on during the cutscenes, which is a pain in the ass. So that, I really hate master volume. I'm pretty sure this was the fastest early access game that I've seen. I'm gonna double check my notes after this, and I'll probably put in a little thingy on the screen that corrects my date. But I don't think this game even actually spent a year in early access. So it honestly feels like it was rushed to meet a market date. And I went on a rant about this. You guys never saw, unless you were there actually live to hear it. I was going to upload it to YouTube, but I had too many editing issues with it. But investors, long story short, investors need to stop being greedy. They need to learn how to actually launch a game, or how the game industry works. Because if they keep rushing these companies to push out half-assed games that aren't finished, they're just going to end up ruining the company's reputation, and no one's going to want to buy from that company anymore. So I feel like master volume is a lazy way to get things going, to push it to a release date. Like I said, I'm not a developer. I don't know the actual reason why someone would pick master volume. That's just my thoughts on it. Moving on. For an ARPG, my experience with the loot was very underwhelming. I wasn't a fan of their choices in rarity color. Yeah. See, this is another thing. I was not. So anybody who's played an ARPG for at least 10 years or 5 years, or practically any other, I think maybe Path of Exile might do this as well, which is really annoying. But we all grew up, even in MMOs, we all grew up on this one color coding system. Gray is trash, white is trash, green is trash. So now I went through, this is another underwhelming issue. I went through all the difficulties during early access and now, and I went up to level 30. I went up to level 35 in early access on one character, and that was the War Machine, or the Forged, and then we did it here on the Sharpshooter, and all the difficulties, it feels like I'm playing Division 1. Everything's just a sponge, and nothing really felt rewarding. So Yeah, the difficulties weren't really rewarding. The difficulty, the rewards versus the difficulty versus how hard they made it was kind of pointless to me, to be honest. The game is not very min-max friendly because the way because the way you have to respec, they have these things called spectacles, and it's basically the only way to get them, as far as I know, is through the contract system, which is their battle pass. You get 1 point to respec at any given time, but they're so far and through the contract pass that it's a real pain in the ass to really experience and experiment with skills. So it's like not very min-max friendly. So it's like they literally have you go from level 1 to 20 or 25, however long it takes you to fill out the entire skill tree, just to see what skill does what. And then you gotta re-roll again. That way you can actually put your skill slots, your skill points, into the correct build.
Receiving incoming transmission.
Also, my experience through the skill tree, it felt, after playing all 4 classes, through like level 10 to 20 and 35, it really felt like they really wanted you to focus on one skill tree and your relic. You couldn't go back and forth between, because you got 3 skill trees. You got 2 that are 2 that are defaulted to the character, and then you have your choice of a relic. Basically, the relic is like there's like 5 or 6 elemental talent trees, which they're elemental based, and you get to choose one. There's poison, lightning, fire, frost, blood, and I can't think of the other one. I'll have a picture of it up here so you can see it from there. But the issue is, when I was doing my back and forth, it seemed like, because a lot of the characters have like this special ammo, or take the forge for instance. Every basic attack you do on the forge builds up heat. Now the way to get rid of that heat is use skills that are called vent skills. Now, every vent skill uses the same heat. The only difference is some come off cooldown faster than others. And you can build up heat pretty fucking fast. So, the issue with that is that I found myself not being able to get both the skills that I wanted, because some of them were literally on the same cooldown, and then some of them just weren't really worth it because of the heat accumulation. So I found myself just sticking to this one talent tree. So I think the questing system AI could. Okay, so this is the problem with this kind of game, where they don't limit you into one, because it's a plus, but it's also a minus. It's a double-edged sword. The weapon system is open, so you can use any weapon on any class except for a few. I think there are a few weapons that you can't use on certain classes, but for the most part, it's pretty open. And the issue with that is you have to use specific builds for, like, if you're going like a sword build, they're going to give you a staff, or if you really want a legendary and you're using a gun, they're going to give you a legendary sword. And you have no use for that. So it got really annoying because the loot is very random. Now, I ran through my 4 characters. No, I'm going to say through my 8 characters that I ran through early access and launch, I found probably about 7 legendaries in total. And I found the most legendaries on one character, which was I found like 4 or 5 of them on one character, which blew my mind, because on the sharpshooter, I found literally 1. From 1 to 30, I found 1. But on my Warforged, I found like 5 from 1 to 20. And I'm like, what the fuck? So, but I rarely found any in the early access. It was just really out of place, to be honest, for me. The loot, for an ARPG that's based off of loot, having underwhelming loot was very annoying. Now, this is also kind of like it's a very hard thing to get right, because Avengers had the same issue. you can either drop legendaries too often to where it's like, oh yeah, legendary, whoopee, and then it's like, oh my fucking god, can I get a fucking legendary already? Jesus. So it's like, even WoW had this issue for a while where they were so freaking rare, it was really annoying. But I feel like they either drop too often. There's a problem where they drop too often, and there's a problem where they don't drop enough. And Avengers had the issue where it dropped too often, and here they don't drop enough, or at least randomly. It's very random. The RNG for Legos, I feel like that table needs to be fine tuned because it's a little all over the place. Now, this is another issue with it. They do a poor job of telling you what your limitations are on the Rail Master class. Because unless I missed it, and feel free to call me out in the chat in the comment section below about this, when I was playing the Rail Master and I was enjoying it, up until the point where I found out that I could only use 3 cars on the thing, and I got even more pissed off when I found out that I was forced to use 1 car. So really, I only had the choice of 2 cars to choose from out of 4 cars that I could have added onto my cart, which was annoying. I understand limiting it to not make it OP, so you can't have like all 4 of the cars, but it never told me throughout the skill time or the game time of the class that, hey, you only get 2 cars in general to use to choose between. And having 3 cars, I guess, is okay, but the fact that they forced me into this one basic car that's called Build the Train, which is basically just a basic turret, and I didn't want it, so you're kind of stuck with that turret, so you really only have a choice between 2 cards. It just really killed it for me. This is an issue that I found in the Relic talent tree. There's a lot of copy pasta, in terms of talents and shit like that. Now, for an ARPG, the most important thing for a player, most important, is feeling powerful and unique. You don't have, and they kind of went that way with they kind of try to do that with the Relic tree, but it bites them in the ass because half the tree in the Relic tree is copied from every other Relic tree. Now, there's only one skill, in my opinion, in the Relic tree that should be allowed to be copied, and that's the skill that gives you more Relic energy, or it reduces the consumption. One of the two. That's vital to that tree. Everything else should not be a copy pasta thing, and unfortunately, it is. As I went through the trees, more and more skills were being copied from every other tree, and it annoyed the shit out of me, because if you're trying to make a game in an already flooded market, the last thing you want to do is use a lot of copy pasta, because it takes away from the uniqueness and it takes away from your identity. Because honestly, overall, the game feels like it's struggling to find its identity. Personally, I'd rather play if Torchlight 2 is multiplayer, I'd rather play that. Because the game feels more grounded, it feels more like a Torchlight game, and the class selection is a lot better in that game. The class selection in this game is so fucking out there and random. It feels like they were struggling to be creative, and they just couldn't really figure out what to do. Like, the Dusk Mage was interesting. The Sharpshooter was bland and boring, and it's not even a Sharpshooter. Like, when I think of the word Sharpshooter, I don't think of someone who can summon spiritual pets and spiritual monsters and shit like that. I've never thought of that when I heard of a Sharpshooter. The Forge is actually an enjoyable class. Probably one of the only class I enjoyed, long term. Rail Master was okay up until the point where I found out that I was restricted in what I could do build wise. And that's pretty much it with the class system. Like, it felt like they were struggling with identity. Rail Master felt like something they were really trying to just be really, unique with. Because, let's be honest, that those two, the Forge and the Rail Master, are probably the only unique classes in this bunch, because I guarantee you some game out there has done something like the Light and Darkness thing before, and the sharpshooters in almost every other fucking game. But maybe that's why they decided. Honestly, my issue isn't with the skill tree of the sharpshooter, it's the name. If they would just change the name to something else, it'd be completely fine. It would be completely fine. I'd be completely fine with that. That could be their unique class or whatever. But that's the issue. And I feel like they just need to change the name. That's it. So overall, I feel like the game just has no soul and no identity. They're struggling for the identity. So that's my review. That's my, in my opinion, review. I'm sorry it took so long to get another one out. There's been a lot of shit going on for everybody this year. I meant to do one for Detroit, then I ran into a personal trauma. Then I meant to do one for Other Side, and then I couldn't finish it because I ran into a game-breaking bug. Then I wanted to do one on Avengers, and by the time I waited to do the Avengers one, everybody else and their mother had done an Avengers review and basically said everything I wanted to say. So I wanted to make it I wanted to push this one out as soon as I could, so I could actually get one going. Thanks for watching. Bye.